They say it's normal to be mean to your crush, but Akitiru never believed that theory. These thoughts fill Akitiru's mind as he enters the dorm, but before he can even reach his room, a loud noise echoes from inside. Standing outside, he shakes in irritation, taking a deep breath to keep himself composed. Inside is none other than Iroha singing her heart out. She sprawled comfortably, humming and belting out the lyrics to a song, which only fuels Akitiru's growing frustration. Then Akitiru finally snaps. He storms into his room and yanks the power cord from the outlet, cutting off the music instantly. Iroha turns around, completely unfazed, and greets him cheerfully before lecturing him about how rude it is to barge into someone's room uninvited. Her smugness only irritates him further, as this is his room and she's the one trespassing. He tells her to keep her volume down before she disturbs the other residents and points to her headphones as a hint. Instead of complying, Iroha teases him maliciously, implying that he wants to touch her. Akitiru shuts her down coldly, stating he has no interest in her antics. Her non-stop chatter only makes him feel sick. Then Iroha accuses him of trying to catch her while changing, even joking that she'll call the police. In reality, Akitiru is the one who should be calling them because she broke into his room after all. He considers it for a moment but realizes that no one would believe him over her. She plays the victim too well. Iroha loves asserting her dominance over Akitiru. At one point, she even lies flat on his bed, deliberately emphasizing her chest. Akitiru looks away immediately, but she has hidden the dorm key between her chest. It's true he gave her the key, but that doesn't mean she can just walk in whenever she pleases. She pushes further, teasing that once he drives her away, he'll end up fantasizing about her. This finally makes Akitiru snap, so he grabs a spray bottle and splashes water on her face. They launch into another argument. Iroha insists that she's basically like his little sister since she's his friend's sibling, but Akitiru rejects that notion entirely, calling her a stranger. She continues to press his buttons, teasing him at every opportunity. Just then, Akitiru's phone rings. It's his uncle. He glares at Iroha, warning her not to mess around because his future depends on this call. She reluctantly promises to behave. His uncle, Makoto, is the president of HPW, a major entertainment company. Makoto calls to talk about Akitiru's bold application to the company without taking the proper exam. He isn't exactly impressed by the move, but since Akitiru is his nephew, he's willing to make it work under certain conditions. His tone suddenly turns serious as he asks Akitiru if he has a girlfriend, catching both Akitiru and Iroha completely off guard. Immediately, Iroha's eyes light up with mischief, clearly coming up with a scheme. Akitiru notices this and warns her to stop whatever she's plotting, but she ignores him. Instead, she moves closer and starts making strange noises, ensuring Makoto hears her presence on the call. Panicking, Akitiru quickly lies and says it's just a cat he adopted. Unfortunately for him, when Makoto casually asks questions about the cat, Akitiru can't answer any of them, making the situation even more suspicious. Iroha doesn't back down and continues to push Akitiru further, making him mutter curses under his breath and confusing Makoto. Desperate to keep up his lie, Akitiru pretends that the cat is attacking him to make the situation sound believable. Eventually, Makoto starts to piece things together and assumes Akitiru has a girlfriend. Panicked, Akitiru quickly denies it and struggles to shove Iroha away. Fortunately, Makoto seems pleased to hear he doesn't have a girlfriend and tells him he'll explain the details of his application soon. After their conversation, Iroha rolls around on Akitiru's bed, complaining that she's thirsty. With a sigh, Akitiru tells her to get herself a drink, and she cheerfully skips off, leaving him frustrated. The next day, during his vacant period, Akitiru spends his time writing in his notebook, reflecting on life and death and his vow to use every minute to secure a better future. As the subject ends, Akitiru's best friend, Ozuma, slumps into his chair, exhausted. Luckily, Akitiru took notes for him, and Ozuma gratefully thanks him. To return the favor, Ozuma invites Akitiru to have some enmitsu after class. Akitiru is always amazed by how great Ozuma is as a person, but Ozuma turns the compliment back at him. He points out that Akitiru has a genuinely good heart, and that's what makes him who he is. Even though Akitiru insists that everything he does is calculated, Ozuma admires how he always thinks of others too, including him and his sister Iroha. Ozuma casually assumes that Iroha barged into Akitiru's place again, and when Akitiru confirms it, Ozuma teases that maybe she has a crush on him. Akitiru disagrees, believing Iroha just likes to mess around. Ozuma argues that it could be her way of showing affection, but Akitiru stands firm in his belief, and if she truly liked him, there'd be no reason to torment him so much. Before their conversation can go further, a fiery teacher enters the room, warning the students not to waste her time. Everyone quickly rises from their slouched positions, and just like that, homeroom begins. After class ends, a classmate rushes up to Akitiru, telling him that a cute first-year girl is looking for him. Sure enough, Iroha is waiting by the door. When confronted, she tries to act sweet and composed, but Akitiru bluntly tells her to drop the act. Instead of backing down, Iroha pretends not to understand and continues to act wholesome in front of everyone, making Akitiru look like the bad guy. She invites him to walk home together, but when Akitiru turns to grab his things, she adds that she wants to be alone with him, excluding Ozuma. This startles Akitiru, and he reacts loudly. Iroha seizes the moment, acting cute and declaring they're a couple. The entire class gasps, including Akitiru, but she doesn't stop. She dramatically sheds fake tears, fully committing to her act and leaving Akitiru flustered. Ozuma suddenly arrives, curious about what's going on. Iroha immediately tells him that she and Akitiru are going out alone, which makes Akitiru panic even more. He quickly grabs her by the hand and drags her away for a serious talk. Face to face, Iroha keeps insisting that they're together, even though it's obviously not true. She reveals her motive came from the earlier phone call, as she figured he might need a girlfriend to impress his uncle. She smugly declares that she's out of his league, so it's basically his win. But Akitiru isn't amused at all. He sternly tells her not to interfere because his future is at stake. Before he can walk away, Iroha suddenly hugs him from behind. She teases him to notice her, saying the future doesn't matter and what matters is the present. With tears in her eyes, she admits she cares about him deeply and just wants them to stay close forever. For a moment, Akitiru is taken aback, thinking she's being sincere. His guard softens, but just as he's about to believe her, Iroha breaks into a mischievous laugh, revealing it was all an act. She teases him for falling for her act and even jokes about how much she wanted to confess like that. Akitiru is too flustered to respond, his face heating up as she notices his red ears and assumes he's embarrassed. He bursts out in anger, declaring that he'll never believe anything she says ever again. Enraged, Akitiru chases after Iroha down the stairs, but she escapes before he can catch her. Later, he meets his uncle Makoto at a cafe to discuss his application to HPW. Makoto mentions that someone else will be joining them but wants to talk to Akitiru privately first. He brings up the fact that Akitiru has already released a game. Akitiru clarifies that it was a team effort with 5 members in total, Ozuma as the programmer and Akitiru serving as both producer and director. Together with 3 other members, they formed the Fifth Floor Alliance. He admits that the game's success wouldn't have been possible without his team. Makoto notes that the industry has already started talking about their sudden rise, acknowledging their impressive accomplishment. He admits that even he couldn't have done something like that when he was in school, so Akitiru deserves the popularity. Before diving deeper into the topic, Makoto encourages Akitiru to order something first. Akitiru assumes the person joining them might be a manager or representative, so he brings his proposal, ready to make a good impression. As Makoto gives their order, he casually flirts with the waitress, even asking her out for dinner despite her clearly being at work. Akitiru is shocked by his uncle's boldness and calls him out, but Makoto confidently says he knows how to leave a lasting impression on girls, and seeing the waitress's expression confirms it. Flustered, Akitiru excuses himself to the bathroom to calm down. He closes his eyes to forget what he just saw, so he fails to notice the sign saying the lock is broken. He opens the door without thinking and accidentally walks in on Mashiro, who's still sitting on the toilet. Before he can react, Mashiro punches him in embarrassment. Meanwhile, at Akitiru's office, Iroha is bored since he's not around to mess with. A colleague asks her about their relationship, but she firmly says there's nothing going on. Back at the cafe, Akitiru discovers that Mashiro is actually the other person his uncle invited. She's his cousin, Makoto's daughter, and they used to play together as kids, though he didn't recognize her at all now that they're grown up. Makoto then reveals his plan. He wants Akitiru to act as Mashiro's fake boyfriend in exchange for pushing through his application to HPW, leaving Akitiru completely stunned. Mashiro finds the idea ridiculous, but Makoto is completely serious. He explains that he's worried about her transferring from an all-girls school to a co-ed one, so he wants someone to watch over her. Despite his reasoning, Mashiro firmly rejects his plan. Curious, Akitiru asks why she needs to transfer, but Mashiro refuses to let him know, prompting Makoto to hold back the full story. The only detail Makoto reveals is that Mashiro barely attended high school and she's been a truant. Surprisingly, Akitiru doesn't pry in further. For him, that single fact is enough to understand their concern, and he doesn't dwell on her past. Since the condition is tied to his team's employment at HPW, Akitiru decides to accept the arrangement. Mashiro, though clearly reluctant, eventually agrees as well, under the strict condition that their relationship will remain entirely fake. With the deal sealed, Akitiru extends his hand to Mashiro, but she refuses to shake it, still holding a grudge over their awkward bathroom encounter. Watching the exchange, Makoto smiles, convinced they'll get along, though both of them strongly disagree. But before leaving, Makoto reminds Akitiru that as Mashiro's fake boyfriend, any real romantic moves are strictly forbidden. Akitiru doesn't see this as a problem, considering Mashiro clearly dislikes him anyway. Reflecting on everything, he still can't understand why people say being mean to someone means they are romantically interested. He's surrounded by aggressive girls after all. Nonetheless, his fake boyfriend job starts tomorrow. The next day, Akitiru is greeted by Irova, who immediately senses that something's off. She tries to pry, guessing that his mood has something to do with the meeting. He refuses to tell her, but she remains persistent and follows him. Neither of them notices Sumire leading Mashiro around. Once classes begin, Mashiro is asked to introduce herself to Akitiru's class. Out of nervousness, she blurts out that she's also dating Akitiru. The class erupts with whispers, wondering why someone like her would waste her looks on a nobody like him. Suzuki, one of the boys, asks how they met, and Mashiro accidentally says they met in the bathroom. Akitiru inwardly panics, realizing how bad that makes him look. When Mashiro takes the seat next to him, he tries to act friendly, but she immediately turns cold, reminding him that she hasn't forgiven him. Akitiru tries to reason with her, saying they both need to act friendly if their story is to be believable. Mashiro disagrees, insisting that as long as their stories line up, there's no need for them to be close. Ozuma taps Akitiru on the shoulder, asking why he never mentioned having a girlfriend. Akitiru apologizes for keeping secrets but hints that he and Mashiro aren't actually dating. During lunch, Akitiru explains his situation with Mashiro in detail. Ozuma teases him, saying his life sounds like a romantic comedy. Akitiru counters that Ozuma would make a better protagonist, given his personality and the fact that he has a little sister, though Iroha's personality doesn't exactly fit the trope. Ozuma says it's because Iroha already loves Akitiru. Akitiru flatly denies the idea, but Ozuma just smiles and excuses himself to buy lunch. Suzuki approaches Akitiru, asking how he managed to get a girlfriend when everyone thought he was already dating Iroha. Feeling Mashiro's icy glare, Akitiru quickly clarifies that Iroma is Ozuma's little sister, then changes the topic to Suzuki's crush on their teacher, who's rumored to like macho guys. Hearing that, Suzuki gets fired up and storms out of the classroom. Akitiru, still feeling Mashiro's cold stare, sighs and asks if she has a problem. Mashiro demands that Akitiru bring her rice balls filled with seafood, declaring that since they're dating, it's his duty to serve her. She even threatens that if he refuses, she'll call off their fake relationship. Reluctantly, Akitiru does as he's told and returns with 2 rice balls and a drink for her. He sits back down and quietly eats a piece of bread he bought for himself. He briefly wonders if she might be jealous after overhearing his conversation about Irova, but dismisses the thought since Mashiro clearly hates him. Classes resume as Sumire steps to the front of the room, asking the students if they've all completed their homework. One boy raises his hand and admits that he forgot, prompting Sumire's anger. She launches into a lecture about responsibility, warning them that without discipline, they're nothing more than scum. The student tries to explain himself, but Sumire cuts him off, though she eventually lets it slide on the condition that he promises to do better. Akitiru glances at Mashiro and notices how intently she's watching Sumire. He notes that Sumire might not be the ideal homeroom teacher for a transfer student. When class ends, Sumire pauses at the door to call out Akitiru. She instructs him to meet her in the counseling room to discuss an assignment. Akitiru calmly agrees, but as soon as Sumire leaves, several boys approach him in concern, wondering how he can stay so composed when everyone knows how terrifying she is. He simply replies that she's not going to kill him, then heads for the counseling room. When he arrives, he's signaled to enter, only to be greeted by the sight of a torture chamber. He takes a seat at the center, and almost instantly, Sumire's demeanor changes. She bows to the ground, nervously asking for his forgiveness. Akitiru's attitude shifts as well. He suddenly seems far more confident than before. Sumire stammers through excuses about being overwhelmed with lesson plans and teaching duties. Akitiru pulls out his phone and shows her the notifications he received about her online activity, revealing that she's been doing other things instead of working. Sumire's teaching identity is Shibuku Murasaki. In class, she's feared as the strict, venomous queen, but to Akitiru and the rest of the Fifth Avenue Alliance, she's simply Sumire, their illustrator who always struggles to meet her deadlines. Akitiru points out Sumire's harsh words in class earlier, which visibly hurt her pride. She explains that her strict teacher persona isn't who she really is, since it's all just part of the act she plays in front of her students. Sighing, Akitiru decides to change the subject and asks about her progress so far. Sumire grows nervous and shows him her tablet, revealing a completely blank page. Irritated, Akitiru tries to throw her into one of the torture machines, then tugs on her ponytail as she struggles to get away. Sumire insists that she's suffering from artist block. Letting go of her hair, Akitiru sighs and tells her she should have come to him if she was having trouble. Sumire protests, saying that doing so would ruin her cool image. Clearly losing patience, Akitiru presses a few pressure points on her shoulder in frustration. Once he releases her, he mutters that he never imagined Sumire could be so hopeless. He recalls the first time they met. He was scouting for potential illustrators at a manga convention but hadn't found anyone. Just as he was about to give up, he noticed a comic depicting a taboo romance. The artwork was so detailed that it immediately caught his attention. When he approached the artist to ask if she'd join his project, she turned around, and to his shock, he realized it was his homeroom teacher. That was when Akiteru decided to use what he knew about her secret to keep her working for him. Sumire still wishes that the encounter had happened differently, as it gave Akiteru the leverage to control her reputation as a reliable teacher. Akiteru tells her it's her own fault, and now that she's part of his team, she'd better start making drafts for the game. Sumire groans that she still can't draw because of her artist block. Akiteru suggests that they just sleep on it, but Sumire misunderstands and blurts out that she doesn't like boys 15 years and older. Akiteru scolds her for even thinking that way and tells her to eat something to get her blood flowing so she can focus on work. He also grants her a half-day extension, which immediately lifts her mood. Before he leaves, Sumire asks about his real relationship with Mashiro. Akiteru admits that it's a fake relationship he accepted to help them gain support from his uncle's company. Sumire then reveals that the school has special instructions on how to handle Mashiro's case. Akiteru immediately guesses that it's because she's a shut-in. Akiteru admits that that's all he knows, so Sumire explains that Mashiro was bullied at her previous school. Some of her classmates had discovered a secret she was keeping and used it to hold power over her. Sumire admits she doesn't know what the secret is, but she asks Akiteru to help make Mashiro's school life as comfortable as possible. She says she wants Mashiro to genuinely enjoy her time here, and she's confident Akiteru can make that happen. Akiteru brushes off the praise, but Sumire insists he should take the compliment, reminding him that both she and Ozuma are also grateful for the impact he's had on their lives. Flatly, Akiteru tells her that flattery won't earn her another deadline extension. Afterward, Akiteru returns to the classroom and asks Mashiro if she'd like to walk home together. Mashiro, however, coldly tells him to stay away from her. Whispers spread quickly, with some teasing that Mashiro must be its tsundere, and that the two of them act like a married couple. Hearing the comments, Mashiro grows flustered and bolts from the room. Akiteru watches her leave, wondering why she acts so cold toward him. Ozuma, noticing his expression, remarks that he doesn't think Mashiro is a bad person at all. Akiteru agrees but says she should at least let him get close enough to protect her. He asks Ozuma for advice, but Ozuma admits that Akiteru has a tough case, given that Mashiro already views him negatively. Alone in the shoe locker area, Akiteru suddenly feels a pair of arms wrapped tightly around him from behind. A familiar, irritating voice follows, and he immediately recognizes it as Iroha. He asks her to get off, but she insists that she's simply showing him kindness by keeping him company. Pressing herself closer, Iroha teases that if he really wants her to let go, the softness he's feeling will disappear. It's only then that Akiteru realizes her chest is pressing against his back. To make matters worse, Akiteru quickly realizes that something feels off, and Iroha confirms his suspicion. She admits that she isn't wearing underwear. She explains that she recently grew a little, making her undergarments too tight. Even her school uniform had become so snug that some of the buttons popped off, meaning that if she pulled away from him now, she'd end up exposed. Akiteru has a hard time believing her, but the slim chance she might be telling the truth keeps him from pushing her off. If she's lying, he'll just look like a fool. But if she's not, forcing her away could spell disaster, not only for his friendship with Ozuma, but also for their group's deal with his uncle's company. After all, if anyone sees them like this, people will assume he's cheating on Mashiro with Iroha. Deciding to minimize the damage, Akiteru quickly hooks his arms around Iroha's legs, shifting her into a piggyback position. Iroha panics as Akiteru taunts her, trying to get her to admit she was lying, but she stubbornly refuses. Akiteru bolts out of the school, taking a side route to avoid being seen. Iroha grows flustered from the sudden dash and blurts out that she surrenders, prompting Akiteru to finally stop. He doesn't let her down immediately, making her apologize for lying just to tease him. When he finally drops her, he scolds her for her behavior, only to realize she was partially telling the truth about not having underwear on. They end up walking home together, and Akiteru asks if she has any advice on befriending a difficult girl. Iroha pales, assuming he finally has a crush, but Akiteru quickly corrects her and explains the situation with Mashiro. He clarifies that his efforts are mainly for his own benefit, but Iroha insists that deep down he genuinely wants to be friends with Mashiro. With a grin, she tells him to leave it to her, and that she'll teach him how to win over Mashiro. The next day, Akiteru shows up at school wearing a dog collar and offers to carry Mashiro's bag. During lunch, he serves her a warm meal. After class, he even offers to give her a piggyback ride. All his antics only irritate Mashiro. She grabs his leash and drags him to the stairwell to demand an explanation. Thinking it's some sort of prank, she's annoyed when Akiteru admits that he also feels ridiculous, since it's the kind of scheme Iroha would talk him into. He admits he knew it probably wouldn't work, which only frustrates Mashiro more. She wonders aloud if he dislikes her that much. Before Akiteru can respond, Iroha appears and teases them for being lovey-dovey. Mashiro asks who she is, so Iroha cheerfully declares that she's the mastermind behind everything. As Mashiro watches their easy banter, she can't help but notice just how close the two seem. Suddenly, Mashiro announces that she's leaving and snaps at them to stop bothering her. Later, as Akitiru and Iroha arrive home, they're shocked to find Mashiro in their apartment complex. Mashiro accuses them of stalking her, but they quickly explain that they all happen to live in the same building. Iroha cheerfully adds that she's Akitiru's sister in spirit, since her brother is his best friend. Mashiro misinterprets and assumes they all live together, prompting Akitiru to clarify that everyone actually resides on the same floor. Sumire is right next to Ozuma, and Iroha has her own apartment. At the mention of Sumire, Mashiro suddenly lashes out, saying she hates that they all live so close before slamming her door shut. Akitiru approaches her door and confidently declares that he will meddle in her life. Akitiru calls a meeting with his group in his room. He tells them that he wants to throw a welcome party for Mashiro to celebrate her moving into their apartment building. He's already set the date for Friday at 8 p.m., though Iroha worries that Mashiro might not show up. Akitiru gives her a confident smile, saying that all they need to do is bother her enough and that he already has a plan in mind. Before his plans, the Fifth Floor Alliance enjoys a small party of their own to celebrate completing a project deadline. Sumire drinks more than usual, prompting Akitiru to scold her for being the one who's always late with her submissions. Akitiru notices that Iroha seems unusually docile and polite. Iroha explains that she feels a little out of place since she's not officially part of their team, though she's grateful to be included in the celebration. Akitiru gives her an uneasy look, realizing that when Iroha is polite, it throws him off, especially since she's usually a handful. Ozuma compliments Akitiru's cooking, especially the roast beef he prepared. In turn, Akitiru praises Ozuma's technical skills, crediting his engineering setup for allowing their files to upload much faster and helping them meet the deadline on time. Ozuma humbly dismisses the compliment, saying he doesn't think he's particularly talented and that what he does is just simple stuff. He then admits that the only reason he's able to make use of his skills is because Akitiru created the opportunity for him in the first place. So to him, Akitiru is the one who's truly talented. Iroha smiles warmly as she watches the two interact. Then Ozuma suddenly notices that Namako isn't around. Akitiru explains that Namako couldn't join them because of a personal deadline. Namako is their scenario writer. Akitiru first reached out through a fan letter inviting Namako to join their game project and was completely shocked when Namako actually replied and agreed. They haven't met in person yet, but from their online chats, Namako seems professional, reliable, and easy to talk to, unlike another adult Akitiru knows. Sumire, realizing he's talking about her, drunkenly protests. Akitiru brushes her off, saying they're only talking about Namako. When he sees how drunk she is, he asks what she's been drinking, and Iroha shows him the bottle Sumire used to mix drinks. Sumire suddenly exclaims that she feels amazing and lunges at Akitiru for a hug, which she prevents. Akitiru quickly changes the subject, calling everyone's attention to discuss their plans for Mashiro's surprise party. 6 days before the party, Akitiru makes his first attempt to invite Mashiro by repeatedly ringing her doorbell. When she finally opens the door, she's met with Akitiru's enthusiastic grin as he starts telling her about the upcoming party. Before he can finish, Mashiro slams the door in his face. On Sunday, he tries again, but this time he realizes the doorbell isn't working. Undeterred, he decides to stuff her mailbox full of invitation letters instead. 4 days before the party during class, Akitiru tosses Mashiro a note saying he wants to talk to her. They begin passing notes back and forth, with Mashiro asking if what he did yesterday counts as bullying. Akitiru quickly denies it, insisting he just wanted to invite her to a dinner party. Mashiro isn't convinced, pointing out that her mailbox was overflowing with invitations, making it look more like a trash can. When he tries to ask for her Lime ID, she immediately refuses. Deciding to take a break, Akitiru vows to try again the next day. Unfortunately, Mashiro completely ignores and avoids him. On Wednesday, Akitiru catches her right as she steps out of the elevator and reminds her about the party, only for Mashiro to call him a stalker. The next day, he asks her again at school, but Mashiro scolds him for doing it in public. After classes, Akitiru and Iroha head out to shop for party supplies. While browsing, Iroha gets distracted by a stall offering free samples of sausages stuffed with melted cheese. She urges Akitiru to try one, but he gets embarrassed and refuses. The saleslady mistakes them for a couple and encourages him to take one for his girlfriend. When he refuses again, she insists that he should because his girlfriend looks sad. Not wanting to be embarrassed by Iroha, Akitiru reluctantly agrees to try it. But as he reaches for the sausage, Iroha pulls it away, teasing that if he really wants it, he should beg for it. Realizing she's only doing this to embarrass him, Akitiru decides it's best to play into her hand. When Iroha offers to feed it to him, he silently vows to get her back for this later. He eats the sausage and admits it tastes great, while the saleslady watches them fondly from her stall. As they move to a different aisle, Akatiru asks how Iroha can so easily say "I love you" to people. Iroha replies that it's easy when she genuinely cares about them, prompting Akatiru to quietly compare her to Mashiro, who struggles to be honest with her feelings. Iroha asks if Akatiru has managed to get Mashiro to accept their invitation. Akatiru admits he's a bit lost on what to do next. As Iroha reaches for a can of tomato sauce on a high shelf, she struggles to grab it while telling him that maybe he just isn't trying hard enough. She points out that when Akatiru truly wants something, he's usually insistent. After all, he managed to convince both Ozuma and Sumire to team up with HPW. Akatiru replies that it was a necessary move for their studio if they wanted bigger support. Iroha says that Akatiru has a knack for understanding what people really want and uses that to persuade them to try things they normally wouldn't. Akatiru explains that it's only because he saw Ozuma and Sumire wasting their talents that he wanted them to use their skills for something meaningful. Iroha smiles at his reasoning and tells him that his true talent lies in helping people bridge the gap between their wants and their dreams. She finally manages to grab the tomato sauce but loses her balance and nearly falls, only for Akatiru to catch her. Relieved, Iroha grins and remarks that another one of Akatiru's good points is making sure their group doesn't take their freedom for granted. She says that's probably why Ozuma trusts him so much. Akatiru thanks her for the kind words and feels determined to convince Mashiro to come to the party. Meanwhile, over at Mashiro's place, Mashiro tells herself there's no way Akatiru can make her go. On the day of the party, Akatiru can't find an opportunity to approach her during class. Instead, he checks in with Ozuma to make sure everything's ready. Ozuma confirms and jokingly tells him he owes him one for pulling everything together in under a week. Confidently, he leaves the classroom and Akatiru announces that their plan to get Mashiro to attend the party starts now. He catches up with her at the shoe lockers, where Mashiro immediately tells him to stop trying to invite her. Akatiru apologizes and promises not to pull any more tricks. Still, Mashiro doesn't seem convinced. He insists that he just wants to walk home together since they live in the same building. But when he looks at her, Mashiro is already sprinting away from him. Akatiru wonders how much she truly hates him. Even so, the plan depends on them walking home together, so he quickens his pace to keep up. Mashiro notices and starts running faster, demanding to know what he's planning to do as Akatiru chases after her. Akatiru feigns ignorance, claiming that he's only running home because he wants to. Mashiro, aware that he's lying, abruptly changes directions. Eventually, Mashiro stops by a riverbank, completely out of breath. She shouts at him to stop worrying about her, insisting that she doesn't fit in with established groups. She tells him to go and enjoy his own life without dragging her into it. Akatiru frowns and asks where she plans to go if she refuses to make any friends. He demands to know what the point of transferring schools is if she never intends to connect with anyone. He apologizes for the bathroom incident and says it's fine if she still hates him, but she should at least try to make some connections. Mashiro turns to argue but slips. Akatiru lunges forward to catch her, only for both of them to tumble into the river. Soaking wet, Akatiru tries not to look at her since her clothes are clinging to her body. Flustered, she tries to stand but trips again. Akatiru catches her, pulling her against him to steady her. Once they make it back to the shore, Akatiru teases that they now have a matching drowned rat look, making them look like a believable couple. Mashiro actually laughs for the first time, admitting it's the worst couple look imaginable. Sensing her lighter mood, Akatiru continues joking, saying maybe this is a god's way of blessing their fake relationship. Mashiro dryly replies that such a god deserves to die, and Akatiru tells her that if she keeps praying, maybe she'll start feeling better about herself. She admits that no amount of praying will suddenly make people who hate her start liking her. Curious, Akatiru asks why she's so stubborn even though he's trying to get along with her. Mashiro blurts out that it's because of the deal he made with her father, but quickly takes it back, saying she knows it isn't his fault. She adds that she genuinely hopes he doesn't hate her. Akatiru reassures her that no one actually hates her. Mashiro hesitates and confides that she's scared of not fitting in and of being ignored. Seeing she's about to talk herself down again, Akatiru gently tells her there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. He admits that he isn't exactly someone who stands out either. He often gets overlooked because he doesn't have any remarkable skills. Akatiru claims that he's just an ordinary person with an ordinary set of skills. His comment makes Mashiro protest, insisting that he isn't ordinary at all since he's the leader of the 5th Floor Alliance. Akatiru looks at her in surprise, wondering how she knows about his group. Mashiro quickly covers it up by saying her father often talks about the game he developed since it earned a lot of money. Akatiru corrects her, saying that all the earnings just go back into the game's development costs. Mashiro then remarks that he could easily be the most popular student in their class, but Akatiru reveals that no one actually knows he or the others are behind the hit game. She's surprised and asks if he's afraid of being made fun of. Akatiru says he just wants to stay humble about their success and not let the attention give him an inflated ego. Listening to him, Mashiro smiles and fondly calls him weird. Eventually, they return to their apartment building. Mashiro still refuses to attend the party, though she admits she's thankful for the invitation. As she walks toward her door, Akitiru asks if she can start treating him normally next week. She agrees but pauses when she notices her door is unlocked. They begin to think that someone might have broken in. Akitiru steps in front of her, offering to go inside first to make sure it's safe. Slowly, they enter the apartment together. Just as they're about to reach the main room, Akitiru mutters something strange under his breath, then pushes Mashiro gently forward as he swings the door open. Mashiro is greeted by a loud pop of confetti and cheers from the other residents of the 5th floor. Completely bewildered, Mashiro demands to know why everyone is inside her apartment. Akitiru sheepishly explains that this is actually his place. They'd put up a divider to make it look like his unit was the last one in the hall, so she'd think it was hers. Mashiro frowns and asks why they went so far when she doesn't even consider them her friends. Iroha chimes in that none of the tenants are really friends except Akitiru and Ozuma, though she adds she'd rather they were a couple. Sumire immediately jumps on the idea, imagining an entire romantic scenario between them, earning her a hit from Akitiru. Iroha continues, explaining that since they all live on the same floor, they naturally started doing things together. Mashiro guesses she means the game, surprising Iroha that she knows about it. Iroha clarifies that she isn't actually part of the team. Akitiru adds that it's fine if Mashiro doesn't think of them as her friends, she could just think of them as her fake boyfriend's friends for now. He mentions that there's one more member, Namako, who isn't present but is still an invaluable part of their group. Mashiro smiles at being included and finally decides to join the party. After the party, Iroha bursts into Akitiru's room and tries to hug him, but he immediately dodges. Getting serious, she praises him for successfully inviting Mashiro and tells him he's a really kind person. Iroha then thanks Akitiru for letting her be part of their group, without revealing that she's actually the voice actor for the 5th Floor Alliance's game. Iroha talks about her role as the secret voice actor for the 5th Floor Alliance. Even the other members don't know that she's been doing the voice acting, but she's still grateful to be included in their get-togethers as an outside participant. She's also happy that it was Akitiru who discovered and approached her in the first place. Akitiru decides to talk to Iroha about the past. In his story, Akitiru approached Ozuma and asked if he could show him his experiments. Ozuma agreed on the condition that Akitiru came over sometimes to check on them. Akitiru accepted, and that was how their friendship began. Not long after, Akitiru's parents left to work elsewhere, and he started living in the same building as Ozuma. One afternoon, Akitiru caught Ozuma studying the floor tiles. When he asked what Ozuma was doing, Ozuma claimed he was just playing with numbers in his head, using the tiles as his reference. Akitiru offered to let him stay at his place, but Ozuma declined, saying his sister would be arriving soon. Just as he said that, Iroha appeared, looking confused to see Ozuma outside their door. Ozuma explained that he had forgotten his keys and was waiting for her. Iroha then noticed Akitiru, prompting Ozuma to introduce him as his friend, neighbor, and classmate. Iroha let a surprised expression slip since she didn't expect Ozuma to have a friend. Akitiru introduced himself politely, and Iroha did the same. That was the first time Akitiru met Iroha. He remembered her as reserved and polite, nothing like the outspoken girl she was now. The next day, Akitiru brought up Iroha since Ozuma had never mentioned her, and she was rarely seen around the building. Just then, Otoi walked into the classroom, catching everyone's attention because she was believed to be suspended. Otoi walked up to Akitiru and Ozuma and told them she needed to speak to them. They agreed, and once they were in a more private spot, Otoi apologized and offered them candy. Akitiru pointed out that it was against school rules, which amused Otoi. She said they shouldn't be so uptight, especially towards someone who had been skipping school. Her words confused them, since they had assumed she was suspended. She felt a little disappointed by the rumors, since she had never done anything that would get her suspended. Ozuma suddenly asked if he could take one of the candies. As he plucked one from her hand, Akitiru reluctantly took one as well. Otoi asked if Iroha was Ozuma's sister and said she wanted to know what kind of girl she was. Ozuma struggled to answer, which surprised Akitiru since Ozuma was usually very direct. Otoi got impatient, saying it should have been an easy question. Akitiru reasoned that it was difficult for Ozuma because he didn't know the intent behind it. Seeing his point, Otoi revealed that Asagi had noticed Iroha seemed to be taking an interest in delinquents like them, so she wanted to know if Iroha fit that type. However, based on their reactions, Otoi guessed she was wrong and that Iroha was just a typical honor student. She admitted she had hoped they'd know Iroha's true personality. Akitiru asked if they planned to welcome her into their group, and Otoi admitted that if Iroha were to approach them, they would welcome her. She then left, and Akitiru asked Ozuma if he was okay, since the question should have been easy to answer. Ozuma admitted that he and Iroha didn't really talk much, so there wasn't much between them besides blood relation. Ozuma shared that the previous day had actually been the first time they had spoken in 2 months. Akitiru was shocked since it was the first time he had heard of siblings who lived together but barely talked. He asked if their parents ever brought it up, but Ozuma said they didn't since both of them were rarely home. Akitiru couldn't help but feel concerned about Ozuma's family situation. Wanting to help somehow, he asked Ozuma if he could hang out at his place after school to play some games. After school, Ozuma welcomed him in, and the first thing Akitiru noticed was that the living room had no television. Ozuma explained that there wasn't one because he spent most of his time in his room. They headed to his room, and Akitiru was greeted by a complete mess, with items scattered all over the floor. He told Ozuma to try cleaning up, but Ozuma said he liked it that way because he knew where everything was. He also claimed that living in clutter helped him come up with better ideas. He handed Ozuma his game console so he could hook it up. While Ozuma worked on it, Akitiru noticed that Ozuma had built his own PC. They started playing, and soon Akitiru heard Iroha enter the apartment. He excused himself, saying he needed to go to the bathroom, but in truth, he just wanted to learn more about Iroha. As he leaned closer to hear what Iroha was doing in her room, he noticed that it sounded like she was talking to someone. Just as he tried to make out the words, Iroha unexpectedly opened the door to step out, leaving Akitiru frozen awkwardly in front of her. She was about to scream, but Akitiru quickly covered her mouth and pulled her into her room, shutting the door behind them. He told her he would remove his hand if she promised not to scream. When she nodded, he let go, only for her to slap him. Iroha then realized the person she had hit was Akitiru, and he hurriedly tried to explain himself. However, Iroha had already decided he was a creep who snuck into people's homes to eavesdrop. She even wondered aloud if he had fallen in love with her at first sight and was stalking her. Akitiru quickly denied it, but before he could defend himself, Iroha's phone started ringing in his hand. She snatched it away to tell Asagi she would call her back later. Akitiru asked if she was trying to join a group of delinquents through Asagi, but Iroha snapped at him not to make baseless accusations. Akitiru insisted she shouldn't lie because he already knew about it. Iroha got irritated and told him it was none of his business, but Akitiru argued that he was just doing what was right because he was friends with Ozuma. Iroha fired back that being friends with her brother didn't make them close, since they were as good as strangers. Akitiru realized this was a difficult situation. He knew Ozuma already struggled at school and felt out of place because of his odd personality. It seemed like Iroha's actions might only cause more misunderstandings that could end up hurting Ozuma in the end. He tried again and asked if Iroha would like to share her problems with him. This only annoyed Iroha further, and she sarcastically said that her brother's friend kept pestering her and that she was troubled because she wanted him out of her room. Over the next few days, Akitiru decided to do some digging. Akitiru left school early, telling his teacher he had a fever. The heat was unbearable, so he stopped by a vending machine to grab some water. After rehydrating, he continued searching the area until he heard a girl singing along with a guitar. He immediately suspected that she was Asagi. As he approached, Asagi noticed his school uniform and asked if he was playing hooky. Akitiru grumbled that he didn't need to be lectured by a middle schooler who was obviously skipping school herself. Asagi was taken aback that he knew her and accused him of being a stalker. Akitiru quickly clarified that he was only looking for her because he was friends with Ozuma. Recognizing the name, Asagi realized he must have been the same person Iroha complained about. Akitiru hurriedly tried to introduce himself properly so she would stop calling him a creep, but Asagi just decided to call him her upperclassman. Before he could continue explaining, the intense heat overwhelmed him. His vision faded and he collapsed right in front of her. Akitiru remembers that day vividly. It was one of the hottest of the year. He tells Iroha that Asagi called Otoi for help, and thanks to them, he turned out fine. Iroha listens and accuses Akitiru of using Otoi's lap as a pillow while he was passed out. Akitiru admits it but insists it was Otoi who put his head there, and that they ended up talking about a lot of things afterward. He adds that all the trouble was worth it because their entire group has become close friends, even if they still don't know that Iroha is the voice actor behind their game. Returning to the story, Akitiru sat down with both Asagi and Iroha. He asked Asagi to stop being a delinquent, reasoning that it might do her some good to try living a normal student life for once. Iroha argued that Akitiru was asking too much from her because he was implying tearing her away from her current group. Akitiru calmly explained that he wasn't trying to tear her away at all. He just wanted her to consider her choices. Even so, Iroha continued to insult him, saying he didn't understand how people felt. Trying to put things into perspective, Akitiru said he was certain Asagi wanted more than just hanging out with friends, pointing out that she had a real passion for music. Then he asked what Iroha wanted to do. Iroha said it didn't really matter. Akitiru insisted that it did matter. Whether she wanted friends or wanted to pursue music, it was up to her to decide. When Akitiru tried to press the question, Asagi stepped in and told him he was being too harsh. Asagi said that Iroha wasn't trying to become a musician at all and that Akitiru shouldn't push her. Iroha looked shocked, not realizing Asagi could see right through her. Asagi explained that, as someone in the music scene, it was obvious Iroha wasn't aiming to perform and that she was simply a fan of music. Iroha admitted that Asagi's observation was true but confessed she deeply admired Asagi. Akitiru misinterpreted this and wondered if they were secretly dating. Iroha immediately denied it, saying she only admired how brave and confident Asagi was for doing what she loved. Akitiru still didn't understand why Iroha needed to hang around Asagi and Otoi to be like that. Seeing Iroha struggle, Asagi revealed the truth, that Iroha wasn't allowed to have freedom or hobbies at home. Akitiru was confused. While he knew their apartment didn't have a TV, Iroha still had access to the internet and other leisure. Asagi explained that even so, Iroha wasn't allowed to have fun, and she had been obedient all this time. Akitiru asked if her current actions counted as betraying her mother's trust. Iroha quietly confirmed it but admitted she didn't know what she really wanted. Akitiru took a moment to think. Iroha clearly lacked the freedom to pursue her passions or even explore them, unlike Asagi and Ozuma, who could do whatever they wanted. With a new sense of determination, Akitiru decided that he would help everyone find a place where they could freely chase their dreams while staying in school so that no one would ever label the girls as a bad crowd again. Asagi complained that Akitiru was meddling and insisted they didn't need his help. But Akitiru stood firm, saying he would help them whether they liked it or not because it would ultimately benefit both him and Ozuma. Asagi asked what he was planning, but Akitiru admitted that he had no idea yet. Still, he reassured them that he would find a way. After paying for his share of the meal, Akitiru left already deep in thought about how to make everyone happy. He wondered what he could do with people who had talent in programming and music. Suddenly, inspiration struck. He visited Ozuma and said they should make a game together. Ozuma was surprised but listened as Akitiru explained his idea in detail. Akitiru believed that with Ozuma handling the programming, everything would go smoothly. What he didn't realize was how much research Ozuma had to do to make the code work. Meanwhile, Akitiru focused on developing the characters, story, and initial artwork. For the time being, they used public domain music just to test how the project would come together. During one of their sessions, Ozuma admitted that he enjoyed creating things with Akitiru. He explained that while he had always tinkered and experimented alone, it felt fulfilling to finally build something alongside someone else. He also found it exciting that their project would soon be available for the world to play. Akitiru agreed and said he already knew the perfect people to test the game on, explaining that he would have Ozuma's sister, Iroha, and Asagi play it. They invited Asagi and Iroha over to test play their game. At first, Asagi was more concerned about the state of the room. However, Asagi seemed to really enjoy it, and even Iroha's expression showed genuine interest. When they sat down to discuss the game, Asagi said it was very mid. She complained that the music sounded cheap, and that the gameplay was the only thing that made it enjoyable. Akitiru mentioned that gameplay is the true charm of any game. He explained that simple games like rock, paper, scissors are great because they are complete, the rules are simple, and the goal to win is clear. He added that this is also the formula for a good video game. He continued that they could create something fun even with a small budget. He then talked about his dream to make such games and how he was lucky to have Ozuma, who had a talent for programming. However, he said their problem was the music since they used free ones. He wanted something original and high quality for the game. Asagi grew suspicious and Akitiru asked if they were interested in helping with the game's development. Iroha was shocked to be included, but Akitiru reassured her that since there was a lot to be done, her involvement wouldn't be a problem. Asagi admitted she was intrigued, but didn't want to betray Otoi's kindness. However, Akitiru had already contacted Otoi and received her permission. A glimmer appeared in Asagi's eyes as she encouraged Iroha to join them, saying that it would mean she wouldn't have to become a delinquent. She added that they could leave behind their boring lives if they joined Akitiru. To everyone's disappointment, Iroha declined the offer. She apologized to Asagi for dragging her into her problems and promised not to ask her to include her in the delinquent group again. She said she would still support Asagi's performances and then excuse herself so the others could continue their meeting. Akitiru decided to go after her and eventually found her at a nearby park. As he approached, he heard her talking to herself, her voice shifting as if she were speaking to more than one person with different personalities. She was debating with herself about how the game development idea sounded good, but she didn't know how to fit in. Unlike Asagi, who had a clear talent for music and could easily fit herself into anything she wanted to do, Iroha felt lost. During the meeting, she noticed how genuinely intrigued Asagi looked while playing the game. Her other voice asked what her own talents were, and Iroha admitted that she had none. She deeply envied Asagi and wished she could be like her. Another voice teased her, calling her a wannabe. As Akitiru got closer, he began hearing more of the conversation and was amazed at the variety of voices and personalities she portrayed. He ended up right in front of her, blurting out his amazement. Iroha noticed him and immediately hid behind the bench, embarrassed that he had caught her. Akitiru told her not to worry since he wasn't freaked out, but Iroha accused him of lying. He admitted that he was surprised at first but was more impressed with her acting. She complained that he shouldn't have lied because now she would continue to feel embarrassed about it. He promised that he wouldn't tell anyone about her habit, but Iroha still glared at him suspiciously. She asked if he planned to blackmail her, and Akitiru promised that he wouldn't. Eventually, she agreed to talk with him, and Akitiru asked about her one-woman act. He told her how he initially thought he was hearing 3 different people, only to realize it was just her once he got close enough. He reassured her that it was incredible how she could shift between voices and personalities so naturally. She thanked him for the compliment and grew shy when he said he had become a fan of hers. She explained that it was just a habit she picked up when she was bored after watching anime and cartoons. She found the characters cute and started mimicking their voices. However, her mother wasn't fond of the hobby. Her mother had caught her, then asked Iroha to stop doing voices and to focus only on studying. Iroha admitted that she never asked her mother why it upset her, but seeing her expression made her feel guilty. When their television was eventually banned, she grew bored and started creating her own characters and stories, acting them out in secret. She soon realized that she didn't have a talent for creating original stories, so she decided to base her characters on the people she had met in her life. Akitiru understood then why her characters sounded so stereotypical, but he still praised her for being able to perform her act without a script. Iroha asked if Akitiru had any background in drama, but he denied knowing anything about it. However, he revealed that his mother was a makeup artist and that he used to tag along on several of her projects. Because of that, you could tell that Iroha was exceptionally good. Iroha felt shy being praised, but Akitiru continued, saying she had a natural talent for seeing the depth in people's personalities. However, he knew that Iroha would never use her talents because she feared betraying her mother. He then asked why things seemed strained between her and Ozuma. Iroha admitted that she felt Ozuma didn't want anything to do with her. Akitiru guessed that she was waiting for someone to save and change her so she could be free. Iroha looked sad but admitted that he was right. Akitiru suddenly told her to trust him, promising that he would be the one to change her and drag her into doing something fun. Iroha was hesitant at first, but Akitiru asked if she enjoyed portraying different characters. Iroha admitted that it was all she had ever done, though she wasn't sure if it really meant anything. Akitiru told her that this was exactly the path an actor should follow. In that moment, Iroha realized what she wanted, and that was to become an actor. Akitiru urged her once more to join their group, assuring her that they would take precautions so her mother wouldn't find out. Iroha asked why he was trying so hard for her, and Akitiru simply said he was doing it for Ozuma's sake. Iroha agreed to join, but only if Akitiru would call her Iroha without any honorifics. A week later, he invited her to his apartment. Iroha immediately accused him of only wanting her body, saying it was suspicious for him to call her over just a week after agreeing to work for him. Akitiru argued that things like that don't happen anymore. To make Iroha feel more comfortable, he told her that he wouldn't lock the door and that she was free to keep her phone with her in case she wanted to report him. Iroha decided to enter, but when he offered her a drink, she refused, saying she didn't want to risk him slipping something into it. She noticed several textbooks about acting. Akitiru explained that he bought them because he didn't want her to spend her own money. He also said it was safer to keep them at his place so her mother wouldn't find out. He insisted that parents always manage to find things, especially mothers. Iroha suspected that this was just an excuse to have her come over regularly, but apologized and acknowledged that he was genuinely trying to help. Soon, Akitiru created a training schedule for her to improve her skills. They began with vocal exercises and watched acting lessons online. They also watched movies together and shared their thoughts afterward. Iroha even started practicing dubbing anime by muting the sound and reciting the lines herself. One day, Otoy invited Akitiru and Iroha to her place, announcing that her studio was finally ready. She led them to her family's old storehouse, which she had transformed into a voice studio for her delinquent friends so they could do something productive. Akitiru was amazed at how far she had gone, but Otoy told him that he was partly responsible for inspiring her. Akitiru felt honored and wanted to add an honorific to her name since they could now record for free thanks to her. Iroha asked if she could step inside the recording booth, to which Otoy agreed. Otoy turned to Akitiru and asked how he planned to find the rest of the voice actors. Akitiru smirked and said that Iroha could handle all the voices herself. Otoy found that hard to believe since the game had male characters too, but Akitiru assured her that Iroha was more than capable. Iroha pulled the script from her bag and signaled to Akitiru that she was ready to record. Otoy watched from the window, excited to see just how good Iroha was. By the time they finished recording, it was already evening. Otoy was surprised at how she managed to record every character perfectly. Akitiru gave her a smug look, saying that he had practically raised her since he was her producer and manager, though he admitted that Iroha had the talent from the very start. One day after they watched a movie, Iroha was gushing over one of the actors, making Akitiru tease her for having a soft spot for handsome guys. Iroha explained that it wasn't really about his looks but his boyish behavior that made her excited. Akitiru was surprised that girls found that kind of trait charming, which led Iroha to argue that his perspective on what girls liked was outdated. Akitiru worried that she might be angry with him, but Iroha teased that she would just give him the cold shoulder, so she warned him not to make her angry. She then turned shy and thanked Akitiru, explaining that she was starting to understand why Ozuma liked hanging around him so much. Apparently, Ozuma had told her that Akitiru was like a light shining down on him, and Iroha felt that a star perfectly described what he was to them. Akitiru felt touched until Iroha turned it into a gag by saying that his last name kind of sounded like the word star. She then mentioned that she had recently spoken to Ozuma. It looked like he was really enjoying working on the game. Iroha explained that Ozuma rarely talked to anyone in the family and spent most of his time in his room tinkering with machines. She shared that this was the first time he genuinely seemed happy doing something. Iroha believed that a big reason for that was Akitiru's involvement in his life. Though Akitiru only saw himself as Ozuma's friend, it was something Ozuma had wanted for a long time. Akitiru then handed Iroha a present. When she opened it, she found a headset inside. He also gave her a spare key to his place, so she could come over any time to listen to music or watch anime and movies. She felt deeply grateful to Akitiru that day since she finally had a place where she could truly be herself. In the present, Iroha fondly looks at the key that was given to her, but Akitiru complains about how she steals things. Iroha argues that he gave her permission, but Akitiru says he wouldn't have if he'd known she would become such a pain to have around. Iroha teases that Akitiru is in love with her, but Akitiru corrects her, saying he loves her talent. He tells her that she is undoubtedly a genius, which makes Iroha feel warm inside. Akitiru warns her not to get a big head, and she playfully complains that she needs praise to grow. He then asks if the situation at her home has changed, but Iroha says that if it had, she wouldn't be in his apartment. She thanks him again, saying that she owes who she is now to him. Akitiru, however, says that Iroha wouldn't have eventually caught someone's eye even without his help. He cites Asagi as an example since she was scouted shortly after they made their first game and later moved to the US to pursue music under a label. Iroha says that Asagi is grateful to him since she still works under him. Iroha complains that he should just accept everyone's gratitude. Akitiru figures that the reason she came over is to make him realize everyone is thankful for him and calls her a meddlesome junior. When Akitiru looks up at the sky, Iroha decides to hug him from behind. He admits that the hug is comfortable. Iroha then confesses that she wants to be more than just his friend's younger sister, but Akitiru tells her that she shouldn't think they are that close. Iroha tries to hide her disappointment, but Akitiru realizes that things need to change because of Mashiro's addition to their group. He realizes that he needs to be friends with all of them, so he invites Iroha to go shopping with everyone, saying that they should all be friends. As she bathes, Iroha thinks to herself about how gifted she is at reading people. However, it caused her to become more withdrawn, and she credits Akitiru for changing that part of her. She's aware that she often takes advantage of his kindness, and she even feels guilty about it. But she can't help feeling a bit irritated with him yesterday because she had assumed he was asking her out on a date. It turned out he just wanted the entire group to go shopping together. Iroha predicts that Ozuma will probably decline, while Sumire might not want to go since they are all of her students. However, she's fairly certain that Mashiro will agree to go, and that Mashiro has feelings for Akitiru. She believes that today will be a battle between her and Mashiro, and fired up by the thought of competition, she swears out loud that she will not lose. When Akitiru arrives at the meeting spot, only the three of them are present. Iroha scolds him for making them wait, and Mashiro even agrees with her. Akitiru can't help but think the two get along surprisingly well when they team up to diss him. Suddenly, Iroha links arms with him, which flusters him. She cheekily explains that friends linking arms is normal, but Akitiru protests that only girls do that with other girls. Iroha defends herself, saying she only knows how girls get along. Akitiru considers scolding her, but before he can, Mashiro nervously links arms with his free arm, explaining that if linking arms is normal, then she has to do it too. Akitiru tries to convince her that it isn't normal, but Mashiro refuses to believe him. Iroha suddenly bursts out laughing, saying the three of them look like a real harem. Akitiru turns even redder as Iroha laughs uncontrollably. She tells him she has no shame and that her own embarrassment doesn't matter as long as she can keep making Akitiru uncomfortable, which only makes him more annoyed. Akitiru decides to start the outing with a movie, but both Iroha and Mashiro want to watch different films. Both girls insist that their choice is better and soon begin arguing about which movie to watch. Akitiru watches them bicker, clearly not tired of hearing them fight. Iroha accuses Mashiro of pretending to defy popular opinion just to seem cool, while Mashiro fires back, claiming that Iroha only follows trends and can't even explain the movie in depth like a real fan could. However, Iroha isn't fazed and confidently declares that she spends hours studying and watching various films. Akitiru dryly points out that she can only do that because she sneaks into his apartment and uses his streaming accounts. Without missing a beat, Iroha claims that Akitiru's home is also her home. Mashiro is shocked at how close the two seem, and Iroha, Noticing her reaction, decides to boast that she's at Akitiru's apartment almost every day. Realizing that Iroha is intentionally trying to provoke Mashiro, Akitiru steps in and suggests that they could each watch their chosen movie separately and meet afterward, but both girls reject the idea, scolding him for missing the point of a group hangout. Akitiru realizes he can't win against them and proposes that they settle it with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Iroha wins, so they all end up watching her choice, much to Mashiro's disappointment. After the movie, Akitiru admits that it turned out to be pretty good. They later decide to stop by the food court. Iroha excuses herself and Akitiru casually guesses that she's heading to the restroom. She invites Mashiro to come with her, but Mashiro declines. After Iroha leaves, Akitiru asks if Mashiro is still nervous around her. Mashiro admits that she is, even though she knows Iroha is actually a nice person. Akitiru tries to reassure her, saying that most people don't quite know how to handle Iroha either, but Mashiro quietly adds that Iroha's energy reminds her of the people she dislikes. Akitiru notices that Mashiro is genuinely bothered, so he gently tells her that she can talk to him about it if she wants. Suddenly, Mashiro hears a familiar voice calling out to her. Two girls from her old school approach and start mocking her. They notice Akitiru and begin making fun of him too. Mashiro starts trembling in their presence, and seeing this, Akitiru decides to speak up since they won't stop running their mouths. The girls aren't fazed at all. They keep insulting Mashiro, teasing her about the novel she writes, and threatening to tell Akitiru about it. Having heard enough, Akitiru suddenly stands up and firmly tells them to stop and get out of the area. The girls act tough and claim they have a strong guy with them, but Akitiru counters that he has even crazier people backing him and Mashiro. He knows how terrifying Sumire can get, so his threat isn't an empty one. One of the girls notices his confidence and whispers to her friend that it might be better if they leave. They quickly run out of the food court just as Iroha is about to rejoin Akitiru. Akitiru checks on Mashiro and asks if those girls were the reason she started skipping school. Mashiro quietly admits that they are, but refuses to talk about the novel they mentioned. Instead, she bolts from the area. Iroha urges Akitiru to go after her, and they decide to split up to cover more ground. After running around aimlessly for a while, Akitiru realizes he needs to think instead of just searching. He recalls that Mashiro had wanted to watch a particular movie earlier. He finds her inside the theater watching the shark movie they didn't get to see, and takes a seat beside her. Mashiro keeps her eyes on the screen as she tells him that the girl who just died was a cheerleader who bullied an otaku boy, and the character deserved it. She then turns to him and asks why he followed her, calling him a liar and a stalker. Realizing she was being harsh, she apologizes for insulting him. Instead of getting mad, Akitiru tells her that insulting him is better than doing nothing. He tries to guess what kind of insults Mashiro would throw at her bullies if she had the courage. Mashiro lets out a small sound of approval before admitting that she's very awkward around people she doesn't know. She explains that she spent most of her time alone, and to escape reality, she started writing a novel. The two girls were the first to find out about it, and they soon told the entire class, leaving her humiliated and exposed. Mashiro begins to cry, and Akitiru gently tells her that novels written as an escape from reality are often the best kind. He mentions that one of his favorite writers is someone named Namako, and is pleasantly surprised when Mashiro recognizes the name. He goes on to talk about how great a writer Namako is, though he doesn't reveal that Namako is actually the writer for their group. Akitiru then recalls how one of Namako's novels begins with a foreword about hating reality and using writing as a form of escape. He says he deeply sympathizes with Namako's work and worldview. Mashiro comments that Namako uses a pen name which she finds a bit shady, guessing that Namako doesn't want to be found out because he's embarrassed. Akitiru agrees that it's possible, but says that people shouldn't be denied their hobbies, even if they're embarrassed. He reassures her that while some people might not see value in her writing, there will always be others who will appreciate her work. Mashiro agrees, but admits that she still feels uneasy because Iroha reminds her of her old bullies. She confesses that she feels she and Iroha won't get along. Akitiru gently pats her head and tells her that even though Iroha might resemble those girls, she's nothing like them. He adds that if Iroha ever makes her upset, she can always come to him, and he'll lecture Iroha. He then offers Mashiro his hand, and she takes it. Akitiru sends a message to Iroha, letting her know that he's found Mashiro. As they go to meet Iroha, Akitiru and Mashiro find her talking with Mashiro's bullies. Mashiro is terrified that her fears have come true, but Akitiru tells her to watch and listen. To their surprise, Iroha suddenly insults the bullies for mocking Mashiro, calling them trash, not even worth her time. She loudly calls Mashiro adorable and lucky to have such a perfect boyfriend. Then, making sure the entire area can hear, she berates the bullies for meddling in Mashiro's life, calling them lowlifes who bully others because they have nothing better to do. Angered, the girls try to fight back, but Iroha raises her hands and dares them. Her tone and demeanor shift instantly. Mashiro is confused by the sudden change, and Akitiru explains that this is Iroha's talent. Iroha continues berating them. her voice more frightening. The bullies cower and ask why she's defending Mashiro when she claimed they weren't even friends. Iroha clarifies that while they aren't friends yet, her relationship with Mashiro has nothing to do with this. She simply can't stand rotten personalities like theirs. As she prepares to punch one of them, Akitiru steps in and stops her. Iroha glares at him, and even though he knows she's bluffing, it still sends a chill down his spine. Akitiru calmly repeats his earlier warning and adds that they should never show their faces to Mashiro again. The bullies bow several times before running off. When he turns back, Iroha thanks him for his perfect timing, admitting that she doesn't actually know how to fight and was worried she'd have to pretend to throw a punch and be found out. He helps her up and points out that she seemed genuinely angry at the bullies. Iroha confirms it but says her old self wouldn't have done anything about it. Akitiru then asks Mashiro what she thinks of the real Iroha. Iroha is shocked to realize Mashiro was there and apologizes for interfering. However, Mashiro also apologizes, admitting she had misunderstood Iroha. She confesses she was wrong and asks if they can be friends. Iroha happily grabs her hands, overjoyed to finally be accepted as Mashiro's friend. Later that evening, Makoto treats Akitiru to dinner to thank him for improving Mashiro's mood and helping her open up about school. He mentions that Mashiro even made a friend and asks if it's the same Iroha from the 5th Floor Alliance. Akitiru clarifies that Iroha isn't actually a member. Makoto then asks if she's the voice actor from his last game. Akitiru is surprised he knows, since Iroha's voice work is supposed to be confidential. Makoto explains that Mashiro had praised Iroha's acting skills, so he guessed her identity. He also says that he can tell all the voices in the game belong to one person. He promises to keep her identity secret, knowing that her anonymity adds appeal. Makoto asks if Iroha is Akitiru's girlfriend. Akitiru firmly denies it, and his confidence convinces Makoto. However, Makoto warns him never to become Mashiro's boyfriend. Akitiru replies that he won't since he's sure Mashiro doesn't even like him that way. Makoto looks at him in disbelief over his cluelessness, but decides probably for the best. Meanwhile, Mashiro is happy she decided to transfer schools and meet her allies. Still, she isn't ready to tell Akitiru and the others that she's actually Namako. She admits to herself that while she was thrilled to hear Akitiru say he admired Namako, she now realizes she wants to be special to him as herself. Elsewhere, Iroha lounges in Akitiru's room as usual, listening to music. When Akitiru suddenly turns up the volume, she gets mad and tells him to take responsibility if her eardrums get damaged. With a deadpan expression, Akitiru says he'll marry her to take responsibility, then immediately adds that it's a joke since the headphones aren't loud enough to cause damage. He explains that he spent good money on them and notices how worn they are from frequent use. Iroha tells him she uses them constantly to study her craft. Akitiru says that if she's truly grateful, she should stop teasing him, but she playfully replies that teasing him is how she shows gratitude. She admits she likes him enough to get jealous of Mashiro, but Akitiru doesn't believe her. Iroha says she was ready to become Mashiro's rival, but Akitiru reminds her that they ended up becoming friends instead due to the bullies' involvement. Just then, Akitiru receives a message from Namako, only to see that it's a confession of love directed at him. Akitiru wakes up one morning shocked to see Mashiro on top of him. He backs away as Mashiro offers him a huge bowl of food. She encourages him to eat, but Akitiru can only stare at the enormous amount of seafood in the bowl. Mashiro becomes sad and apologizes, saying she only knows how to cook seafood. Akitiru is weirded out by the sudden change in her mood and asks if she hit her head. Mashiro smoothly tells him that she simply fell head over heels in love with him. Akitiru tries to make sense of everything happening this morning. He wonders if the reason Mashiro is here is because he responded to her confession of love, which he only vaguely remembers receiving. Mashiro sets down the food and climbs back into bed, telling him they should act like normal lovers. She begins kissing him and pinning him down as he struggles to push her off. It isn't until later that he realizes it's only a dream and Iroha has been shoving a popsicle into his mouth. Allowing himself a few moments to recover, Akitiru finally snaps, bites down on the ice pop, and sits up, but she claims she's just being a good junior trying to wake up her senior. Akitiru tells her to wake him up normally, but she complains that his reaction is too dry for someone who was just woken up by someone as cute as her. Akitiru tells her not to complain since at least he isn't a creep. Iroha starts eating the ice pop and teasingly asks what would turn him on. Akitiru notices her uniform and quickly turns away. Iroha takes this as a sign that he finds her chest attractive, but Akitiru explains he's only complaining because her uniform is worn sloppily. Akitiru asks why she's in his apartment so early, so Iroha points at his digital clock, showing that it's already an hour past his usual wake-up time. She reveals that Ozuma sent her because he wasn't responding to her brother's messages. Akitiru pales. At first, he thinks this is another one of Iroha's tricks, but she insists she isn't mean enough to change his clock. He asks Iroha if today is a weekend, but Iroha proudly declares that it's a weekday. Akitiru considers looking for a doctor's appointment he can schedule, but Iroha jokes that if a doctor were to see him, They would assume he's sick for completely different reasons. She tells him in a hurry so they can make it to school on time. Akitiru rushes through his morning routine, his mind still on Mashiro's text confession. He's certain it was a real confession, but he can barely remember how he responded. He checks their message thread, rereading her confession. He can't believe it's from the same Mashiro who acts like she hates his very existence. He wonders if her feelings are genuine since her actions say otherwise. Still, he knows he needs to take this seriously because ignoring it could end up hurting her. He decides the best thing to do is to be honest about his own feelings. Once he's finished getting ready, he and Iroma rush to school. When they stop at a traffic light, she tells him he should just take it easy and show up late. Akitiru explains that he can't do that because his reputation could be ruined if he's late even once. Hiroa argues that one late arrival won't destroy his world, but Akitiru says he also can't live with himself if he gives Sumire an opportunity to scold him about tardiness, especially since he always nags her about deadlines. Hiroa finally understands his refusal to be late, then asks if it's okay for them to be seen going to school together. Hiroa explains that her concern is about what Mashiro might think. Akitiru pales at the mention of Mashiro's name, and Iroha teases him for being popular with the ladies. She even says that if a ladies' man doesn't spend an evening with a girl by a certain age, he'll start repelling girls instead of attracting them. Iroha then grabs his arm and teasingly offers herself so he can practice and make his first time with Mashiro flawless. Instead of getting flustered, he simply pulls his arm back and calls Iroha an idiot. Iroha gets irritated because he didn't react the way she wanted. Akitiru teases her that if she wants him flustered, she should try sneaking up on him in the evening. Iroha screams that she will as Akitiru runs toward the school. Iroha watches him go fondly, knowing their relationship will have to remain stagnant for now. Akitiru manages to make it to his classroom before the first period. He notices Mashiro sitting right next to his desk and decides to try talking to her about her message. Mashiro acts as if he's an eyesore, not even acknowledging that she sent anything to him. Akitiru notices she's colder than usual and asks if he did something wrong, but she answers that simply hearing his voice makes her sick. Akitiru stares at her in shock, wondering if this is the same person who confessed to him the night before. Realizing something, he quickly tries messaging her. Mashiro responds that she feels embarrassed. Akitiru looks up from his phone, but Mashiro only gives him an icy glare. When he looks back at his phone, Mashiro is a completely different person, gushing about how much she wants his attention. He feels stressed by the constant personality shifts between the Mashiro in real life and the Mashiro who's chatting with him on her phone. Sumire enters the class and strictly praises everyone for their good attendance and punctuality. However, Akitiru can't take her seriously because he knows she rarely meets her own deadlines. Before beginning her lesson, Sumire tells them that drama nationals are approaching and the drama club she moderates will be representing the school. However, they still lack talented members, so she encourages the class to join so they'll have a better chance of winning gold. Ozuma pokes Akitiru's back, concerned about how unusually late Akitiru woke up. Akitiru says he's fine and that he just ended up falling asleep longer than expected. Ozuma admits he's worried Akitiru is pushing himself again and reminds him to take things easy. Akitiru smiles and tells Ozuma he shouldn't work too hard either because the Fifth Alliance would fall apart without him. Ozuma then takes out his phone and says he wants to talk about the new game's story. Akitiru says he read it and thinks it's really bad. Ozuma agrees, even pointing out a particular scene that doesn't make sense. Akitiru says it progressively gets worse, even mentioning that it somehow turned into a musical toward the end. They both wonder what happened because their original game was a horror game, so it should have been obvious that the sequel would follow the same themes. They wonder if Namako is in some sort of slump, so Akitiru decides everything can be fixed with a simple discussion. Ozuma and Akitiru then feel a strange glare in their direction and see Mashiro staring at them. Mashiro feels a bit jealous, thinking Ozuma and Akitiru are too comfortable with each other to simply be just friends, but she quickly shakes the thought away once she realizes it. Akitiru notices her, and another wave of stress comes over him. He has to learn how to deal with Mashiro's hot and cold personality, as well as Nemako's loss of direction. The number of irregularities is just too much. He needs to get Nemako back on track, or the future of the Fifth Floor Alliance will be bleak. Meanwhile, Iroha has a hard time controlling her smile in class. Her mind keeps drifting back to her morning walk with Akitiru, even though she is supposed to be focused since she's an honor student. She also notes that her mood isn't entirely giddy. She feels troubled after seeing Mashiro's confession. A classmate then calls Iroha, telling her someone wants to talk to her. Iroha checks and sees it is Mashiro. Stepping out to talk, Mashiro thanks her for taking the time to see her. Since they are still in public, Iroha puts on a pleasant and polite personality. Mashiro notices but doesn't take the hint. She assumes Iroha is playing around and decides to act like a mouse. When Iroha doesn't mirror her behavior, Mashiro realizes she read the signal wrong and apologizes. She thought it was something normal high school girls do, so now she feels embarrassed. Iroha finds her fumbling cute but notices several students watching them. She brings Mashiro to a more private area. Mashiro admits she is worried because Akiteru entered class later than usual today, and she was hoping Iroha might know the reason. Iroha tries to insist that Akiteru is human and will have occasional inconsistencies in his schedule, but Mashiro insists he doesn't, noting that he always arrives at the exact same time. The fact that Mashiro memorizes Akiteru's daily habits and can confirm it makes Iroha feel uneasy. When Mashiro explains she is worried because she thinks he might be sick, Iroha suggests simply asking Akiteru. Mashiro says she gets too embarrassed, and given the timing of events, it would feel awkward to speak to him. She doesn't mention the confession, but Iroha already knows since she was there when Mashiro sent the message. This also means Akiteru hasn't given Mashiro an answer. She feels sorry for not telling Mashiro the truth, but it's hard to predict how Mashiro will take the news. Seeing how earnest and worried Mashiro is and how much she depends on her, Iroha decides to help ease Mashiro's worries. She tells her that Akiteru simply overslept because he was tired, and it's unlikely he is sick since he's a major health nut. Mashiro feels relieved and considers taking lunch alone today so Akiteru can focus on getting better instead of looking after her. Iroha tries to convince her to invite Akiteru to lunch since he usually eats alone anyway, but Mashiro says she will only trouble him. Iroha is certain that if Mashiro acted this sweetly in front of Akiteru, he would surely be smitten with her. The bell rings, so Mashiro heads back to class but asks Iroha if they can meet up again. Iroha is taken aback but reassures her that they can meet anytime since they're friends. Once Mashiro leaves, Iroha can't help but worry about Akiteru. Lunch arrives and Akiteru decides to eat alone. He had planned to use this time to talk to Mashiro, but she had immediately rejected his invitation. Iroha decides to sit beside him, cheerfully offering her company. Akiteru scolds her for being too friendly when he's supposed to be dating Mashiro, but Iroha says it's fine since most people at school don't even know who he is. Iroha insists he should enjoy eating with a cute girl like her and even offers him a rolled omelette. He sighs and refuses, prompting Iroha to complain about how much of a bummer he is. Akiteru corrects her, saying sighing has its benefits, but she should reflect more since she is the main reason he sighs. He then decides to ask Iroha about Mashiro. Since Iroha saw the confession, he admits he's been thinking about his answer. He's tried talking to Mashiro, but she keeps turning him down. Iroha feels irritated when Akiteru mentions that this is the first time anyone has confessed to him. He notices Iroha has a strange expression and doesn't understand why she's upset when he's trying to open up. Iroha feels insulted because she has proclaimed her love for him numerous times, but he never counted any of them as confessions. She gets angry but stays vague about what she's upset over. Other students notice her mood when she walks off. To top it off, she messages Akiteru, calling him a jerk as soon as she leaves. Akiteru is surprised since Iroha normally doesn't explode at him like that. He feels everyone around him is acting strange and prays no more problems show up. However, he is called to Sumire's office again and he pales, wondering what could have happened this time. To his surprise, Sumire proudly shows him her new illustration, finished an entire week before her deadline. Akiteru is caught off guard and almost snaps at her due to all the irregularities of the day, but he quickly switches to praising and rewarding her. He prepares to leave, but Sumire asks for a favor. The moment he hears it will take time, Akiteru says he cannot help her today because he thinks he is sick and must be coming down with something. He decides to leave early but ends up leaning against the wall, suddenly feeling overwhelmed by the day's events. Akiteru is sick in bed, mulling over how he has to waste a whole day just to recover. He then hears movement in the living room and figures that Iroha has let herself in. He gets up to check on her and sees her wearing an apron and cooking. Iroha explains that she got worried when she heard Akiteru went home early, so she decided to come over to check on him. Akiteru feels suspicious because Iroha usually reserves this polite personality for school and lets loose at his home. Sensing his unease, Iroha tells him she isn't playing any tricks. She tells him to return to his room and rest while she prepares his food. He does as told, and moments later, Iroha enters his room with the meal. She sets it on his table and insists on feeding him because she feels it is her duty to take care of him. She figures he's sicker and more tired than either of them assumed. She reminds him that he always brags about how his health is his capital, so he should let her take care of him on occasions like this so he can recover faster. He reluctantly agrees, so Iroha starts spooning him some porridge, blowing on a spoonful to make sure it's not too hot. Akiteru watches her and wonders how such a cliché event is happening to him as he leans forward so she can feed him properly. He takes a tentative bite and is surprised that it actually tastes good. He ends up finishing the whole bowl. He thanks Iroha for the food and she cleans his mouth with a towel. Embarrassed, he apologizes, but Iroha reassures him that she wants to do all this. She then tells him she'll clean up the mess and head home so he can focus on resting. After she leaves, Akiteru stares at the door, fully expecting Iroha to burst back in and announce she's staying longer in her usual playful tone. When she doesn't return, he messages her to ask if she's playing tricks on him. She replies harshly, and Akitiru can't help but think she's trying to be the opposite of Mashiro. Recently, Mashiro has been really sweet to him over text while maintaining her cold personality in real life, whereas Irova is the reverse. He realizes the two of them are always driving him up the wall with their personality shifts. Akitiru feels a headache forming as he tries to figure out how to deal with the two of them. Suddenly, Ozuma calls to ask if Akitiru is okay. He claims he knows Akitiru is having a problem right now because he created a system that monitors Akitiru's heart rate around the clock. Akitiru admits that it's a little creepy. Ozuma laughs and says it was only a joke. He just figured something had happened because Iroma had arrived home and shut herself in her room. Akitiru considers telling Ozuma what has been happening, but he realizes it would be too complicated since Ozuma isn't aware of Mashiro's confession. Ozuma notices Akitiru's silence and assumes these are issues Akitiru isn't free to talk about, so he tells him he doesn't need to explain anything. They then switch topics to Namako's new written scenarios. Akitiru proposes announcing in their group chat that he rejects the draft. He figures Namako will probably think he's the only one who dislikes the idea, so it's up to Ozuma to back him up in rejecting it so Namako will know the idea is really bad. They settle on that plan, and Ozuma reminds Akitiru to take better care of himself before hanging up. Akitiru notices that he feels a lot better and deems himself well enough to start working. The next day, Akitiru feels much better, and he figures they can finish Iroha's voice recordings after school. He messages Iroha about it, and she replies that she wants Akitiru to beg her to do it. They argue over text, and Iroha seems stubborn about wanting him to beg. She eventually gives in and agrees to do the recording. He then notices Mashiro furiously typing on her phone. He wonders if it's the novel she's working on. As much as he wants to improve his relationship with Mashiro, he needs to focus on working with the Fifth Floor Alliance because he lost a lot of progress while he was sick. He wants to be able to give her a proper answer soon, but Mashiro isn't even giving him an opportunity to talk. He realizes that if this keeps up, he may have to respond via text. When he leaves the classroom for a break, Sumire stops him to check if his fever is gone. When Akitiru tells her he's all better, she instructs him to follow her because she needs to show him something. Akitiru recalls that she had wanted to show him something before, but he had refused because he was dealing with too much at the time. He agrees to follow her now since she makes it sound very important. In her personal counseling room, Sumire begs Akitiru to save her drama club. She explains that the club might get disbanded if they do not at least pass the regional preliminaries of the National High School Drama Fair. The principal doesn't see much value in keeping the club, so this is their last chance to prove themselves. Akitiru fails to see the problem since the drama club's disbandment would mean Sumire has less work on her plate and could use that energy to create art for their company. Sumire tries to explain that one of the main reasons she wants the club to continue is that Midori, her little sister, is the current president. Akitiru tries to recall if he has ever met her, but nothing comes to mind. Sumire then gushes about how great and responsible Midori is. She seems to hint that Midori is actually the one doing her advisor work for her. Akitiru pieces it together, and Sumire admits that with their sibling setup, she can focus on the group's artwork. However, if the drama club gets disbanded, she will be reassigned to the girls' tennis team, and this time she will really have to work because the tennis team is actually good. If that happens, she will no longer have time to slack off and draw like she does with the drama club. Akitiru wonders how Sumire is even an option to coach the tennis team. Sumire nervously admits she used her usual personality to convince the principal that she can handle sports. Akitiru scolds her for putting her image above her actual capabilities and causing all these problems. Sumire begs and explains that she had to make others think she isn't a nerd and faking it was the only way she knew how. Akitiru sighs, but he knows he has to help because Sumire won't have time to draw for them if she gets reassigned. He stands and asks Sumire if the drama club is really that bad, and she confirms that they are, which is why she's begging for his help. She promises she will meet her deadlines if they manage to pass the preliminaries. Akitiru scolds her again since she should always meet her deadlines, but Sumire insists it would be much worse if they lose and she ends up coaching the tennis club. She eventually convinces Akitiru to attend at least one of their practice sessions during lunch hour. Practice is held in a classroom at the end of a hall on the 4th floor. Many believe the room is cursed, so the drama club made it their unofficial base for meetings and rehearsals. They peek inside and see some of the club members practicing. Akitiru then recognizes Midori. Midori is at the top of their grade, having earned perfect scores across all subjects since entering high school. She is known as a prodigy among prodigies, especially since she manages to balance club responsibilities without losing her #1 position. Akitiru deadpans that they might need a DNA test because Sumire is nothing like Midori. They peek inside again, and at this point, Akitiru is convinced they don't need to worry since Midori should be capable of handling everything. Midori announces the start of the dress rehearsals, and Akitiru is surprised when the girls set everything up with proper equipment, sound, and lighting. However, his hopes drop once he sees Midori and the others are performing stiffly in mushroom costumes. The performance is confusing and the acting is nearly lifeless. The music and lighting also clash with the tone of the play, making Akitiru question what he's even watching. There is also a misplaced gong that Midori keeps striking, making the script almost impossible to hear. The script itself doesn't make much sense to begin with. Once the play ends, Akitiru turns to Sumire and tells her he doesn't understand how the performance can be this bad or how broken the script is. Sumire smiles. She knew that having Akitiru watch even one practice would make him understand how doomed they are to fail the preliminaries. Midori, on the other hand, is delighted with the performance and proudly tells the club members that they scored at least an 80 in today's rehearsal. This prompts Akitiru to reveal himself and say that the performance was bad. Everyone is shocked to see him there, and Akitiru explains that he couldn't stay silent when they all believed they performed well, even though the quality was worse than an elementary school performance. Midori tries to explain, admitting that they haven't improved much recently, but she insists they are better than he thinks. She then notices Sumire standing by the doorway. She is surprised to see her, but says she is happy that Sumire has been more active in their practices lately. Sumire says that since the competition is coming up, she wants to do her part as their advisor and make sure she leads them all to victory. Midori and the girls are touched by her words of encouragement. Sumire then introduces Akitiru, and Midori wonders if he is the new member Sumire has been mentioning. She insists that the club is already perfect with its current members and that they cannot entertain a new one. Sumire corrects her and states that Akitiru will be the super producer who will lead them to victory. Midori complains because nothing seems extraordinary about Akitiru. To her, he looks plain and boring, but Sumire insists that he is very talented as a producer and can elevate the drama club's performance. Midori decides to accept the idea but still questions Akitiru's achievements. Akitiru waits to hear how Sumire will explain things, and Sumire decides to lie, claiming he has produced several hit Hollywood movies, much to Akitiru's horror. Midori and the girls seem to believe the explanation, and soon the girls are eagerly waiting to hear his advice. They even feel like they finally have a real shot at winning the nationals. However, Midori then asks what his relationship with Sumire is. She assumes he must have a romantic relationship with her because that's how Hollywood producers are known for having questionable relationships with beautiful women, and she believes that Sumire fits the type perfectly. Akitiru argues that he would never look at Sumire that way, and he refuses to stand there and be insulted by Midori any longer. He decides to leave. The girls begin to panic, and Sumire manages to catch up to him by the stairs. He explains that he could have helped, but he isn't willing to go as far as producing everything for them, especially when Midori clearly dislikes him, so he won't force his help on her. Sumire tries to convince him again, but Akitiru tells her that the real problem is that they can't act, and he can't teach them how to perform at their level. He doesn't tell Sumire that he actually could, and that Iroha could coach them even better, but that would mean exposing Iroha as their voice actress, a secret kept from everyone in their team. He tells Sumire that this is the end of the discussion and that the Fifth Floor Alliance already has too many problems. He doesn't have time to help the drama club. Sumire begs again, saying she won't be able to illustrate if she ends up reassigned to the tennis team. Akitiru scolds her, insisting she still needs to illustrate for them regardless, and that as their advisor, she should find a solution to save the drama club. He walks away from Sumire, and his thoughts drift to Iroha. He is certain Iroha would shine on stage as well, but because of her circumstances, she may never get the chance. Iroha stares at the message Akitiru sent her and grumbles about how inconsiderate he has been with her feelings. She even thinks about ditching the recording session but convinces herself to go anyway. She knows Akitiru constantly rejecting her affection is partly her fault because she always plays it off as a joke. She can't help but compare her situation to Mashiro's. Mashiro has already confessed, and it makes Iroha uneasy because Akitiru is actually considering how to approach Mashiro to give her a proper answer, while her own feelings are always pushed aside. As she groans, Mashiro notices and tries to check if she's okay. Iroha, startled, accidentally asks what Mashiro is doing by the lockers, and Mashiro calmly reminds her that school is already over. Mashiro then shares that she'll be stopping by the library and shows the bag she's holding filled with books with cute covers. Iroha looks at them and notices their titles a lot of people enjoy, so she admits she's surprised Mashiro reads something so crowd-pleasing. Mashiro admits she used to dislike them, but she wanted to try something new. She almost gives herself away as an author and quickly tells Iroha not to mind her words. She then invites Iroha to walk home with her. Iroha tries to think of an excuse to decline because she needs to meet Akitiru at the park so they can head to the recording studio together. She ends up telling Mashiro that she has to go to her part-time job. Curious, Mashiro asks what it is. Iroha teasingly tells her it's a secret no one can talk about, but hints that it involves using her mouth. Iroha can practically see the gears in Mashiro's head turning as she becomes beet red. Iroha teases her for thinking something dirty and reassures her that she isn't doing anything shady. She then invites Mashiro to tag along to her job, but Mashiro panics and quickly says she's actually busy. Mashiro smiles kindly at her and apologizes for keeping her for so long, saying she'll see her tomorrow. As they say goodbye, Iroha can't help thinking how lucky Mashiro is that Akiteru treats her so seriously. Iroha then heads for the park, wondering what act she should put on. The studio is usually where she can be her true self, but with Akiteru there, she's starting to doubt if she can manage that now. Akiteru waits at the park, feeling a little sick about something. Iroha approaches him with the aura of her usual honor student act. Akiteru is immediately put off and finds her behavior suspicious. As they head toward the recording studio, he keeps staring at her and finally calls her out. He's shocked when Iroha simply beams brightly at him. Akiteru asks what her facade is supposed to mean, but Iroha feigns ignorance. Akiteru grows irritated because he knows she's acting in front of him. Iroha seems aware she's been found out but continues pretending she's always been this sweet and well-behaved. Akiteru complains that Iroha not annoying him is actually what's annoying him. Iroha replies that it shouldn't be a problem since she's being sweet and docile, so he shouldn't be bothered at all. Once they arrive, Otoi scolds Akiteru for making rushed requests. She demands her payment, and Akiteru hands her a bag of sweets. She seems satisfied with the offering and then asks if he has any tip for her. Prepared as always, Akiteru hands over a box of the latest cake from Mifuto. She accepts the cake and tells Akiteru he can continue to impose favors on her as long as he keeps bringing sweets. Akiteru always remembers to bring luxury sweets whenever they need her help because Otoi doesn't really treat this as a job. There have even been times the studio was closed simply because she didn't feel like working. To keep her cooperative, Akiteru decided to pay her in sweets and pastries. However, Otoi is fickle, so there were also times when she didn't like what he brought and refused them. She inspects the cake closely and decides it looks good, so she allows him to use the studio. Iroha asks for the script so she can head into the recording booth. As Otoi sets up, she tells Akiteru that he's pushing Iroha too far, explaining that most people give actors the script days in advance. She warns him that if he tries this with a professional voice actor, they probably wouldn't want to work with him. Akiteru says he's aware but believes Iroha can handle things. He also can't just give her the script early because of her home environment. Otoi recalls that Iroha's mother hates show business. Akiteru tells Otoi that Iroha only needs 5 minutes to review a script in order to perform it flawlessly. Akiteru looks at Iroha from the director's booth. He reviews that Iroha will be doing 5 very unique characters today. Otoi makes sure Iroha is ready, and once Iroha gives the signal, Otoi starts recording. Iroha confidently delivers the lines, but Akiteru and Otoi immediately notice that her voice and delivery are completely off from the instructions. Not satisfied, Otoi stops the recording and asks Iroha why the character sounds prim and proper, when the description clearly states the character should be brutish. Otoi decides to redirect her with a different character, but every character ends up sounding wrong. No matter what Otoi tries, Iroha keeps giving a bad performance. Eventually, Otoi stops the session and asks Akiteru if Iroha is fooling with them. Akiteru goes pale as he observes Iroha. When he snaps out of it, he quickly apologizes to Otoi and insists that Iroha can do better. Otoi sighs, knowing Iroha can do better, and asks Iroha if she's satisfied with her performance. Iroha confidently declares that she did a great job because her acting is tailored to Akiteru's taste. Akiteru immediately grabs the mic and scolds her. He knows she performed poorly because she dragged her personal feelings into work. He realizes this is partly his fault, but knows that if Iroha continues acting unprofessionally, she will ruin her future. He's about to continue scolding her, but Otoi sticks a candy into his mouth to shut him up. She knows Iroha is already upset, so she tells them the studio is closed for the day. Iroha quietly gathers her things and leaves the studio while Akiteru and Otoi watch her go. Akiteru turns to Otoi and thanks her for stopping him. He had been angry at Iroha and might have said something he would regret. Sensing something had happened, Otoi decides to ask what exactly went on, especially since Akiteru now owes her an explanation for the indirect kiss she just gave him. He decides to tell her about how turbulent Iroha has been with him lately, and Otoi muses about how funny fate is since now he's the one being toyed with instead of the other way around. She claims she's an expert at toying with people, but admits she's no expert when it comes to love or Iroha's personal feelings. However, she insists that she cares about Iroha's talent, and she won't tolerate it if Akiteru ends up ruining her. Otoi then explains that she's very confident in her hearing. She loves music and working with sound, which is why she's fully aware she has no talent to stand front and center in musical performances. When she realized that, she decided to play a supporting role in the industry. She could tell Iroha is a prodigy, and she wants to bring out Iroha's best because every time she hears Iroha voice act, she can feel the passion and hard work behind each character she brings to life. She shares that for Iroha, she's willing to devote the rest of her high school life to nurturing her talent. Akitiru realizes that both he and Otoi have been charmed by Iroha's ability. Otoi then threatens to make him pay if Iroha's dream gets crushed because of him. She then comments that Mashiro must be really cute. When Akitiru struggles to give her a straight answer, Otoi points out that he's never agonized over answering a girl before. He complains that Otoi hasn't been listening to his problem. Suddenly, Otoi pulls him into a hug. He tries to get out of her hold, but she explains that both of them simply don't understand romantic feelings. Then she asks if he can feel her heartbeat. She says she's aware it's beating fast, meaning that even if she doesn't understand romance, it doesn't mean moments of closeness don't affect her. When she lets him go, she tells him he's probably the same. Even if he thinks relationships are pointless, once he's put in a situation like this, he'll inevitably crave closeness. Akitiru realizes that Otoi is referring to Mashiro's confession and how much it has affected both him and Iroha. He understands now that he handled the situation poorly by hoping the confession would simply fade into the background unanswered, believing that would keep it from affecting anyone. However, he was mistaken. He thanks Otoi, and Otoi notes that the old spark in his eyes is back, so she's confident he can handle the situation now. He apologizes for wasting Otoi's time, but Otoi waves it off and says it's fine, though she still expects payment at their next session. When he leaves Otoi's place, he sends Mashiro a message saying he wants to have dinner with her, and that he will finally answer her confession. They end up in a really fancy restaurant, and Akitiru begins to chuckle at how nervous Mashiro looks. Mashiro tries to insist that her father can cover their dinner, but Akitiru reassures her that tonight is on him since he was the one who asked her out on a date. He recalls how Makoto once mocked him for how he handled girls. He tells Mashiro that he has made decent money in his company, so she doesn't need to worry about the cost of tonight's dinner. Mashiro points out that she isn't part of the team and doesn't even help with the games. Akitiru tells her that their date is actually business-related, but she doesn't need to think about that and should just enjoy herself. She then worries about the wine, but Akitiru tells her it's non-alcoholic. Mashiro visibly relaxes and notes that almost everyone in the restaurant is a couple. She is pleased that she can look at other couples in this kind of setting without feeling any hatred. She reveals that before she didn't like couples because she felt they were flaunting their happiness and mocking her for still being single. But now she knows couples are simply happy being in each other's presence. She finally understood it once she experienced being in love herself. The two of them get comfortable and begin their dinner. Afterward, they visit the viewing deck, and Mashiro admits she is happy she came. Thinking back on her date, she realizes she truly enjoyed it. Akitiru decides to give her his answer, but Mashiro says she no longer needs it. Akitiru insists, saying he might regret not giving her one. Mashiro smiles at him and admits that she knows Akitiru is about to reject her. She had a feeling that he wanted to give her a wonderful memory before ending her hopes gently because of his kindness. Akitiru argues that she's wrong. He was going to reject her, but not out of kindness since he wanted to preserve his contract with Makoto. However, Mashiro refuses to believe that reason. She knows Akitiru was only saying it to make her feel better. She then says she was always aware she didn't stand a chance with him because even Iroha isn't his girlfriend yet. Iroha is incredibly cute, and if Akitiru hasn't fallen for her, then Mashiro feels she cannot compare. She explains that her confession was more for herself than anything else. She wanted to try moving forward from how she used to be because she was too scared to make herself vulnerable. She claims she is satisfied with herself and she considers that a win, so she doesn't really need an answer from him. However, she vows that someday she will make Akitiru love her, even if it takes years. Akitiru tries to convince her that forgetting him and moving on would be more efficient. Mashiro scolds him for being a min-maxer and explains that her goal isn't to get any boyfriend. She specifically wants Akitiru to be her boyfriend. He tells her that relationships aren't his priority because of his company and he'll probably be busy until they graduate, but Mashiro insists she will remain by his side. Mashiro takes her leave but promises Akitiru that starting tomorrow, she will do her best to make him fall for her. Akitiru then moves to the window and stares at Iroha's contact, knowing the next girl he has to face is her. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.